When the ancient yogis created the practice of yoga, they had no idea of the busy urban lifestyle that we live in today. Well, my guest is a yogi and an author, Darren, and he's here to help share with us how to integrate these ancient practices into our everyday life. Darren, thanks for being here.
It's my honor.
So you have written many books, and they have this general theme about mindfulness and yoga. Tell me how that can work in our world today.
Sure. Well, I think that in our world today, yoga, meditation, it was really developed to sit in a cave somewhere.
Right.
And the irony is we need it now more than ever. People are just itching to find a little quiet space from family or work or whatever. So what I've tried to do is write books and present yoga and meditation in a way that the modern busy person can fit it in and have it be meaningful. Because if something's not meaningful, it doesn't really work.
So in our busy lives, the one thing that we don't have the luxury of is time.
Yeah.
So in a yoga practice, how much time does someone need to have?
Well, really all you need is one breath. That said, I find that certainly in my experience, I think this is true of most people, when you meditate, when you practice yoga or any form of mindfulness practice, what happens is you become more productive and more focused. So getting the dishes done, getting those work projects done, gets done in a much shorter period of time. So taking 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour in the morning before you start your day to practice mindfulness, even though you're sort of investing that time in something that seems like sitting around doing nothing, which goes against sort of our Western doctrine of how to do things,
right,
you actually wind up getting infinitely more done. It's ironic, and I haven't quite figured out how, but...
I know, it's interesting. I think sometimes when we can get more centered, that allows us perhaps to be maybe more focused.
Yeah.
And then in that, we don't spend so much time kind of spinning around figuring out what to do next.
Right. I think it's sort of like a hummingbird, you know, that goes from flower to flower to flower, but never takes time to really drink from any one flower. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how we are. We're doing the dishes, but we're not really doing the dishes. We're busy thinking about our grocery list or the projects at work or any number of other things, your child's recital at school. And when we meditate, we train the mind to be on one thing at a time, which is the only time you're really productive. And we've all had moments of that where you really get into a project, cleaning or writing a book or whatever it is, and all of a sudden 2 hours have gone by and you've written 5 chapters or cleaned the whole house. And it didn't feel like a big chunk of time, it just sort of happened. Meditation is training your mind to get into that sort of zone of productivity more easily, more quickly, with less effort, and to stay there longer too.
So let's talk about meditation and specifically mindfulness. There's those who are watching this who don't really understand what mindfulness even is.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Mindfulness is non-judgmental awareness. So we're aware of stuff all the time, but we're usually busy judging it.
Right. Is this a good thought? Is this
really
right.
Judging everything we see, including ourselves. If you think about the last time you sat on the beach and just watched the ocean waves, you didn't try to control them. You didn't say, that wave is good because it's a big one, or that wave is bad because it's a small one. You just sort of observed what was happening without trying to control or manipulate what was going on. And the result was you were profoundly relaxed. If you could take that same approach to everything in your life, you would have that same level of relaxation in everything you do. Most of us can't do that. We're so busy, I'm so busy judging you that I can't enjoy your company.
Right.
It's true of casual relationships, intimate relationships, the work we do, everything. And so when we sit in mindfulness, what we're doing is we're focusing on the breath or a mantra or the sensations of the body in the case of yoga or Tai Chi and martial arts. And you're not judging it. You're not saying, I should be different. You're just observing what's there. And then you can make informed choices about what to do about that. I'm hungry. observe the hunger, and then you can make an intelligent, informed choice about what healthy goes in your mouth as opposed to like a Krispy Kreme donut.
I'm in a hurry and I'll
Yeah.
just do this now. Darren, you touched on something that I think is so relevant today, is this whole concept of the inner dialogue of judgment. You know, we're
Yeah.
judging others, we're judging against ourselves, we're evaluating our thoughts, our looks, our feelings. Are they right? Are they wrong?
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
You know, it's a difficult, and different philosophical traditions have sort of come up with their own explanations, like the Garden of Eden story.
Right.
We blame our ancestors. You know?
Right.
But at some point, we certainly started doing it. We got the message that in order to be of value, you need to make the grade, or look a certain way, or achieve certain goals. And that's like battery acid for the soul. It just sort of deteriorates or makes us believe that the fiber of our being is being deteriorated. And I think that when we practice mindfulness, that non-judgmental awareness, we step back and we become quiet, and we realize that whether I get an A or a B or I get an F on my report card, I can still be at peace. Whether I get the project done or not, I can be at peace. Whether there's traffic on the way to this interview, which there was, by the way, I can be at peace.
You seem very peaceful.
You should have seen me with my son this morning.
Right.
You know, all of these things that we call stressors in life, and everybody has their own buttons, the things that push and challenge them the most. You can have that stress, but you don't need to react to it. And that judgment that we're sort of all told that is essential to get stuff done, to be productive, to be happy, to have a meaningful life, it's sort of a big lie.
Right. You know, I think it's really relevant what you're saying about that we all have these feelings that come up. You know, we're late, we could have done a better job on that test or on that project for work. So those thoughts are natural, they come up. It's not possible to not have those thoughts. But the space after the thought, if we could have the stillness, perhaps that's how we can make the choice in that moment to respond in a way that's not habitual.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of like when you walk into Ben & Jerry's and there's all these ice creams and you have your favorite. Like you think you're going to make a choice when you go in, but you always get the same flavor ice cream. For me, it's like chocolate with chunks of brownie in it or something.
Right.
Can you be happy if they don't have your flavor, if they ran out? Right? We can have a preference. We can have goals in life. Those are important. But when you don't get what you want, can you still be at peace? Right? We can strive to make more money, to start a family, to fall in love, to do all these things that make life really rich and meaningful. But things don't usually work out the way we want, at least not all the time.
It's like that Rolling Stones song, you can't always get what you want,
Exactly.
but you get what you need, right?
Who knew Mick Jagger's was a wise yogi?
Yes, exactly. So you are an urban mystic.
Yeah.
What is an urban mystic?
Well, urban mystic is a phrase I coined when I wrote my second book. And the idea is that initially meditation was for monks and nuns and yogis and shamans who removed themselves from life. They didn't want families. Those were distractions. They didn't want jobs. That was a distraction.
They just want to sit in a
They
cave.
just wanted to sit in a cave or an ashram or monastery and meditate all day or do yoga all day. And that's great if that's your calling in life. But most of us are not called to do that. We have that strong inner pull to start families and have careers and do those things. So what I try to do is take the principles of yoga, which is an Eastern philosophy rooted in India, and translate it into modern life. What is it like to have a cell phone and still be at peace? To sit in traffic. I mean, ancient yogis didn't know anything about traffic on the San Francisco, on the 101.
On the Bay Bridge.
You know, on the Bay Bridge. Or what it was like to try to rush to get your child at childcare and then get them home and get them fed. But the principles are exactly the same. So if we can take that idea that these ancient mystics, and all mystics have had their own variation on it, Christian mystics, Jewish mystics, Sufis, you name it, and we can apply those principles to day-to-day life, then you're not washing the dishes. You're meditating on the act of washing the dishes. You're meditating on the practice of being present to your child when they don't want to put their shoes on and you're just trying to get out the door to work.
Right.
Or when you're sitting in traffic. I mean, you can get upset about traffic. You can give the person in the car next to you what I call the middle finger mudra. But that's not going to clear traffic. It's not going to get you there faster. So you can grip the steering wheel until your knuckles turn white and your fingers fall off, or you can breathe and meditate and treat that as your opportunity to come back.
So it sounds to me like the cornerstone of this is in your breath, is that taking a very deep breath.
Yeah.
Do you think that people have a hard time taking a deep breath? Do they even know how to breathe?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I love yoga is because it taps into the body, which is, you can have a mantra, you can have a prayer bead, you can have all these things, but what if you forget it at home?
Right.
Right? But your breath is there with you, your body is there with you, and wherever you go, there you are. That's John Kabat-Zinn's wonderful book. And your body is always in this moment. It may react as if something from the past is happening or a future fear is happening, but it's always in the moment. So if you come to the sensation of the body or you come to your breath, you are present. And by deepening the breath really reflects your emotional and mental state as well as your physical state. Just as your breath changes when you go for a run versus take a nap, it changes when you're stressed or when you're in love or when you're angry. And so if we can alter the breath intentionally and willfully, then we can change our emotional state, our mental state. We have complete control over those things. But the key, of course, is to choose to do it. And many people don't want to.
So can we talk specifically about the breath? And would you mind giving us maybe a few guiding points on how to breathe as a yogi?
I can. You know, the easiest way to learn how to breathe as a yogi is to watch a baby sleep. We all came into this world knowing how to do it. It's the diaphragm is the primary muscle of respiration, and when we breathe with the diaphragm deep and full, it triggers the part of the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for fight or flight. So if you simply bring your hands to your belly and you breathe into your belly, you sort of push your belly out, you know what they tell you not to do in all the beauty magazines?
Right. We're supposed to suck it in.
Yeah, suck it in, look good in your bikini.
Right.
If you do that and you breathe deep into your belly, your nervous system can't help but be in rest and digest. It doesn't matter how deep down the rabbit hole of fight or flight you've gone. If you can alter your breathing to do that deep diaphragmatic breathing, that same breathing pattern you came into this world doing, the nervous system just unravels, it unwinds and becomes still. And this is why we do yoga. We intentionally put you into a stressful position. I mean, downward dog is, you know, for somebody with tight hamstrings is pretty stressful.
Right.
And then your mind starts to react, and that internal dialogue and judgment of, do I look like the person next to me? Or do I, oh my God, I'm beautiful. I should be on the cover of Yoga Journal. That internal dialogue kicks in, and the teacher reminds you, breathe. Breathe with your diaphragm, breathe deep. And then you get quiet and calm. And the more often we do that, the more quickly, it's like riding a bike. Right? You're out in traffic or whatever is stressing you in your life, and what used to take you hours to get over that argument takes you minutes or seconds.
So this is why it's important to have a practice. It's like anything, you know, you do yoga one time, you take one vitamin, you go to the gym 2 times, you're just not going to get results. You're not going to be able to train yourself and your brain into a new pattern.
Exactly. I think you wouldn't sit down in front of the piano, or if you decided, I think I'm going to run a marathon, and you don't train for it, it's going to be a train wreck.
It'd be a very
short marathon. It's not going to be pretty to look at. And the same is true for spiritual practice. It's unreasonable to expect that we're going to be completely still and quiet in every situation, that we're going to walk around like the Buddha, you know?
Exactly.
And so that's why we practice, and that's that practicing mindfulness, that non-judgment, to be okay with, wow, I just lost it. And I called somebody a bunch of names that probably aren't appropriate for mixed company. Or the internal dialogue is just as acidic,
Right.
right? The stuff we say to ourselves. If you were to speak to a child the way you speak internally to yourself, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, you would be thrown in jail for child abuse.
Right.
You could never speak to a child that way, so why would you do it to yourself?
That's a good question.
But then we start judging ourselves for judging ourselves. So stopping that process through mindfulness is the key. Just smiling at it, say, oh, there I go again.
Right.
There I go again. There I go again.
And again.
Yeah.
So you have a very exciting class called Yoga on the Labyrinth. 700 people attend, and it's in a very unique location.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's inside Grace Cathedral, which is a cathedral here in San Francisco that is enormous. It's on par with the cathedrals of Europe. It's a big Gothic building, and they have a labyrinth on the floor for walking meditation. And a friend of mine actually started it just for the congregants at the cathedral. When he moved and went to grad school, they asked me to take over, and I brought in live music and sent out a few press releases, and
There you
it
go.
went from 20 people a week to 100 to 200. Now we get 6, 7, sometimes 800 people every Tuesday night. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not, even though it's in a Christian cathedral, I would say it's in a Christian cathedral, but it's an Eastern practice, and it's on a pagan labyrinth. And the people who attend are as diverse as San Francisco. I mean, we've got young people, old people, people bringing their kids. One woman brings her dog every week. We have people who are really skilled at yoga and that they can put their foot behind their head, and other people who can barely walk up the steps of the church. And it's stunning and beautiful, and the first thing people notice is the architecture.
Right.
But then what people notice is the people. That yoga is not about touching your toes. It's about finding that peace, that stillness. And that, of course, is the crux of every spiritual tradition. And the idea of it being guilt-free. You know, a lot of people have a lot of guilt and shame from Christianity or all the religions. All of a sudden they're walking into a Christian church, but nobody's trying to convert them. No one's evangelizing to them. No one's saying you need to come to church on Sunday to go to yoga on Tuesday. And that's profoundly healing for people to say, wow, I was raised in this tradition and I felt guilt and shame, but all of a sudden I feel safe.
So what you're really doing here is the ultimate integrated spirituality. You have so many different things, and is there anything that you've noticed that provides for people when you're merging these different Eastern practice, traditional Christianity, all of that together?
Well, I think that when we look at the world, we see all of this frequently religious-inspired violence and tension and hostility and intolerance. And it seems so vexing, like how could we possibly overcome this? And it's not about us even talking to each other. I don't need to understand, like, sometimes we'll have like, I know only because of the clothing that they're wearing. We'll have a woman wearing like a hijab, a Muslim woman, and a Jewish man wearing a yarmulke, and they're not fighting, they're not arguing, they're not trying to convert each other, or they're just doing yoga next to each other.
Yeah, they're coexisting.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, here, sitting here quietly. And if we could get that, if we could just learn how to sit and not talk over each other, we don't even have to talk to each other. Just sit with each other and
share the air.
Yeah, and I think that has been the greatest lesson for me, and I think that's what people really feel. When there's a wonderful priest who introduced me every week, and he'll take off his collar and roll out his yoga mat, and people are like, that's so cool, a priest doing yoga. Like, it sounds like the start of a good joke. But
Right. Well, I think that the thing that's so important to recognize is that, in our core, we're all human beings. We eat, we sleep, we have families, we go to work. Whether we have a different culture or a different religion, we still have that same core essence. We love one another, we love our children. Most of us want peace and harmony. And so if we can go back to that conversation we had earlier about releasing the judgments, then there really isn't anything else. We just exist in the same space.
And I think when we enter into that space of mindfulness in the context of a human relationship, whether it's a husband-wife, or you and your children, or just your neighbors, or people of different religions, we achieve a sense of empathy.
Right.
I don't know what it's like to be you, but I can empathize with what it's like to struggle in life, or to lose a loved one, or to fall in love. I mean, these are universal experiences that we all have.
Right.
But we're so busy saying, no, my type of wedding is the right type of wedding, as opposed to, wow, people all over the world fall in love.
Right.
How cool is that?
Imagine that.
They love their children. Wow. They want to pray or understand where they fit into the universal scheme of things, right? Even atheists, you know, they don't have a theology, but they want to know as much as me or the priest or the rabbi or anyone else, what is the point of life? How am I a better person? How do I have a meaningful life?
It's so profoundly simple, like you say, like the breath we take. We simply live our lives. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much. It was my honor.